Bowling Green and Toledo played last night. Huge rivalry in college football. Did you know that the Bowling Green-Toledo rivalry is known as a battle for I-75?
I did know that.
Okay.
I did know that, yes.
Did you know Toledo won the game last night?
I did hear that. Yes, I did.
It's a good football team, by the way.
That is a good football team.
Very underrated coming out of the MAC. Did you know Toledo has a rocket outside of its own stadium aimed directly at Bowling Green Stadium?
That I did not know. That I did not know. Maybe they have a good rocket department at their university?
I have no idea why they're called the Rockets, but one thing I do know is if you are going to be the Rockets and you have the ability to put one outside of the stadium and you can aim that thing directly at your rival stadium, you should do it every time.
I think it's perfect timing because Toledo, where did I hear that before? Well, we have Ohio State, Michigan next week, which really started with the War of Toledo, the Battle of Toledo, way back when. So it's just another little seed that gets planted in the rivalry, Joshua.
I don't know why they ever fought over Toledo in the first place. It's not a place I don't think anybody's trying to fight over nowadays.
You're just saying that because Toledo is an Ohio city that bleeds maize and blue.
I'm saying it because
a lot of Michigan population.
I lived in Toledo for 3 years when I was a youngster, and I would never go back.
All right, well, we got another great show for you guys today. Yes, the rivalry's just around the corner, but we have some big-time news before we get there. Of course, joined here by my buddy Joshua Perry, the former national champion. Actually, not a former. He is a national champion and captain of the Ohio State Buckeyes.
And Jake Butt is a two-time All-American. You can't take that away from him, nor can you take his Mackey Award for the best tight end in the land. This is the man right here.
But collectively, we have something very exciting for you guys. So make sure you follow us on Instagram. @RedCorner_Blue Corner. That's the handle. Follow us because we have a special surprise for you on that platform. You're going to love it. If you're a fan of this game, you're going to love it. Check us out. More details coming up in a little bit. But we do have breaking news, as promised, outside of the game. David Braun is expected to be named the next permanent head coach for Northwestern. Quick reactions, JP?
He deserves it. They weren't supposed to be as good as they are this year. I think everybody had left them for dead as a program, and he comes in, he galvanizes that locker room, he gets people back excited about what they're doing. They're a fun team to watch as well. If you have not watched them, they are a fun football team to watch, so he definitely deserves to be the head guy there.
Quite simply, it's not about wins and losses in a bubble. You have to say, what's the expectation? Did you exceed that expectation or not? I don't think there's a single coach in college football that has exceeded the expectation more than David Braun. The odds were stacked against him. He made us a promise at Big Ten Media Days. He said, we're going to stand and we're going to fight and we're going to compete. We don't care. Every coach says that. Few act on it. David Braun, a potential bowl game in year one?
How about it, man?
Oh, my gosh, man. That's crazy. But, okay, it's Wednesday. So what does that mean? We have a new batch of college football playoff rankings. They came out last night. And there's movement at the top. Georgia now took over the #1 spot, which means the Ohio State Buckeyes have fallen to #2. The rest of the top 6 remained unchanged. JP, we kind of talked about this in our show yesterday, but really, what was your initial thoughts when you saw this pop up last night?
I'm not shocked at all. Georgia has 2 great wins in back-to-back weeks. Against Missouri and then against Ole Miss, and it feels like the momentum is headed in the right direction for that program. They're playing great defense. Carson Beck, I have to say, is one of the best quarterbacks in the country, and we don't talk about him like that. It's a team that feels like they are trending at the right time for Ohio State, coming off of a really good performance against a bad Michigan State team. They looked the part in that game. It's not moving the needle for anyone, and so for Georgia to take that step into the #1 spot, I think it was only right. And quite frankly, you could have made an argument to me that Michigan could have jumped into the #2 spot, right? Because of what they did on the road against Penn State without their head coach, even though that was their fault, that they're in some trouble. They went out and they executed the way that they needed to. So I think for anybody out there who's a fan of the Ohio State University and you're like, boy, I mean, we get a blowout victory and they drop us down a spot. First off, it doesn't matter because you got to win the one that's coming up in 10 days. And secondly, Georgia deserves to be in that spot right now.
I think some people may not like to hear this. I don't have a problem with maybe letting some of the previous 2 years carry into your thoughts on the rankings this year. It's an analogy of the kid on the playground. When you're the champion back-to-back days at recess, you're the champion until someone knocks you off, as long as you don't have a complete mishap. And Georgia seems to be hitting their stride, which it's hard to deny that they are the best team in the country right now. But with that, I think when Ohio State dropped after playing one of their best games this year. We talked, well, what could that mean for the 4 and 5 spots, specifically Florida State and Washington? That's immediately where it took our eyes. But though there was change with Georgia and Ohio State, there was none for Florida State and Washington. We got a lot of football left to be played. Joshua, how do you see it playing out?
Well, it's interesting because you said that Ohio State got dropped after one of their best performances of the season. Florida State is not even coming off one of their best performances of the season. And Washington, up to this point, has been a team, although they've gotten into a couple games, now that we get to relitigate those, maybe the opponents who are a little bit better than we want to give credit for. Listen, everything's out there for Washington. If they run the table regular season, they win the Pac-12, they're certainly going to be in this. Same thing for Florida State to a certain degree. You got an easy schedule, but for me, I think Washington's a better team at this point.
I don't mind. You can justify certain rankings. My biggest issue is it needs to be consistent, and I think there's a clear contradiction. If you're going to have Georgia bump over Ohio State, but not have Washington bump Florida State, I'd be very shocked if Washington can handle business this week against a really good Oregon State team. They should probably be number 4, but I guess, we're arguing. It'll play out.
Yeah, it certainly will. We're excited about that. Now, you guys can get into some of these arguments here because we are a fully interactive show. So be sure to scan that QR code on your screen or go to watchstadium.com/submit to send us your questions and video. One fan did just that, and now it's his turn in the spotlight.
What's going on, Stadium? My name is Eric Wells, and I got a little bone to pick here, huh? I wish Jim Harbaugh coaches in this game in 2 weeks, just because I don't want any excuses after that game happens. But here's the dilemma. I'm tired of this whole victim notion, okay? Oh, we cheated, we did this stuff, probably more egregious than everybody else, but so did others. I'm tired of this victim notion, okay? Get a grip. You're not America's team. Everyone hates you. I'm over this. I'm over it.
Not America's team. Jake, what do you think?
I see a little bit of the rivalry starting to kick off. That's what I see.
I mean, 10 days away. How could it not be kicking off? I know all of us are excited. And since we're 10 days away from the game, why not set up our first fan fight of the year? So we're going to bring in a few people to give us a fan and insider perspectives. We're joined by our friends from On3, from Letterman Row, representing The Ohio State University. We have Spencer Holbrook and Alex Gleitman.
And from the good guys, the Michigan Wolverines, we have Clayton Selfie and Anthony Broom right here.
We don't need to do that good guys thing. Let's stop down from there. But we have 10 days until this game. We got plenty of time to talk the X's and O's, but we know there's much more going on in this one than just what we're going to see on the field. So I think we know what's on the line, but who really needs a win more? And we're going to start with the Ohio State guys with this one. Spencer, why don't you kick it off?
Yeah, I think it's pretty clear that Ohio State needs a win more, solely because you talk about losing 2 straight, and Ryan Day needing to kind of get that monkey off his back. I would say definitely Ohio State needs it more.
Alex?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Spencer. While Michigan, I understand it's Michigan versus everybody or whatever they're saying up there, and they feel like they want to face adversity and get this win. I think Ohio State needs this one more. Ryan Day 0-2 in the last two contests in this one. I think obviously the whole country is hoping that they do college football God's work and eliminate Michigan without the Big Ten or NCAA having to do so. And then there's the whole thing about wrongfully accusing Ryan Day's brothers of being involved in this thing and everything along those lines. I just think that Ohio State is very motivated and needs this win for a variety of reasons.
Well, Anthony Clayton, I'll start with you. Let me present the other case here because I think a lot of people, part of this huge narrative is people say that the wins are tainted, that maybe Michigan wouldn't have won if they didn't have Connor Stallions on the sideline. So from a Michigan perspective, do they need to win to prove that those weren't tainted at all, that they were the better team anyways?
Well, you want to win as bad as possible. I think both sides in this rivalry, so that's always a tough question. I think a lot of that stuff's coming from rival fans or, people on ESPN or whatever. I would agree with those guys, though, that Ohio State has more pressure on it right now. They've been embarrassed 2 years in a row against Michigan after dominating them for 20 years. So I'd go with them. I think you could tell Ryan Day going after 86-year-old Lou Holtz, the pressure is getting him a little bit, too. And the fact that maybe he did hire a private investigative firm, to come after Michigan, according to some reports out there. So I think clearly Ohio State has some more pressure on it.
Man, so Ryan Day can't get emotional after a game, but Sharon can. Come on, guys. I mean, everybody's trying to motivate their team, right? Come on.
What did I tell you, man? I said this. I loved Ryan Day's emotion after the game. I said I think they'd been missing that for a while. That's what makes it beautiful. I'm not going to pick and choose my fights. I like emotion. Here's an emotional topic, and I want to ask the Ohio State guys, and Spencer, we'll start with you. I'm going to be careful about what I say. Not will he coach in the game, but should Jim Harbaugh be allowed to coach in this game? Spencer, why don't you kick it off?
Selfishly, everybody at Ohio State hopes he does because they want as level of a playing field as possible, especially because a lot of people think that they haven't had a level playing field for the past 2 years with everything that's come out to light. So I think everybody wants him to coach in this game. I think he should coach in the game because the penalty was not really needed. I think that there will be penalties down the road, so let him coach in this game, and then down the road they'll get the penalty that they deserve. But yeah, I think everybody wants him to be on the sideline because they need this to be level playing field for Ryan Day to officially get the rivalry back to where it should be, in his opinion. Having both sides exactly on the same playing field and getting the rivalry back to Columbus.
Anthony, what do you say? Should Jim Harbaugh be on the sidelines for that game?
Without question. I think that it's super, again, and we've said before that if there's evidence that it emerges or there's evidence that the Big Ten has that Jim Harbaugh is connected to whatever's been going on with the sign stealing Connor Stallions, then make that evidence known, and it would solidify the punishment that they put down. But the one that they did, I don't think had there wasn't a lot of reasoning behind it other than, we have to suspend someone with the university, and it just so happens to be the head coach of the football program. But don't worry, it's not a punishment directly to him. So there's a lot of confusion with that. You want to see Jim Harbaugh out there because this game, maybe even more so than last year's now, would either affirm or deny a lot of the things that people have said about both programs over these last 2 years. So absolutely, without question, you want him out there.
Alex, I'm curious about this. So how much does this decision, whether Jim Harbaugh is on the sideline or not, could this have ripple effects beyond just that Saturday on November 25th? Is this a big storyline in terms of the pressure on Ryan Day?
I think the pressure is on Ryan Day, regardless of whether Jim Harbaugh coaches or not. But as Spencer kind of alluded to, I think obviously Ryan Day doesn't want any excuses if Ohio State is able to beat Michigan in Ann Arbor this year. He wants to be able to say, we beat them with their coach at full strength. There's no excuses here. I think, again, the pressure's on him either way. They've lost the last two. To me, they lost the last two. I don't really care what happened with Connor Stallions and whatever. They lined up. They were not the better team on those two Saturdays, and they lost those games. So they need to get back to where they were before 2021 and reclaim ownership of this rivalry.
All right, Clayton, I wanted to ask you, and I know that we're far away from knowing what all of the evidence would say about what went on exactly with the sign-stealing scheme. We know what Connor Stallions was up to. But if you could forecast a punishment that you think would be suitable for the Michigan football program, is there anything that comes to mind for you?
Yeah, well, it's complicated because Jim Harbaugh in Michigan were already dealing with a separate NCAA investigation. So I think they probably tack on a few more games for him just under, even though there hasn't been any evidence that's come to light that he was involved in this or had knowledge of it. But the NCAA has a bylaw that, the head coach is responsible for what goes on in this program and making sure that the program is compliant. So I think that's the route that they will go. I think obviously Connor Stallions already resigned. If anyone else was connected, then I'm sure they will receive their own punishment. But that feels fair to me. I think anyone at Michigan understands that. They just want due process throughout this whole thing, and they don't feel like the Big Ten gave him that with the suspension.
Alex, do you agree or disagree with that?
I'll say I think I could sympathize with Michigan fans and coaches and administrators and players that maybe the process was not done exactly the right way. I do have to agree with that, but I think that, at the end of the day, the coach is responsible. I think that the NCAA is probably going to come down on Michigan harder, but I think in an honest moment, everyone at Michigan, they're focused on the due process and all of that, but I think if they were really being honest with themselves, they say, we're okay with the penalties as long as we get to play our season that has the best chance to win a national championship in a very long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think these are really reasonable takes here about what's going on. And obviously, I think everybody wants to see Jim Harbaugh out there. We want to see these two teams at full strength. It's going to be the best football game of the college football season. I personally cannot wait, but these are our friends from On 3 joining us for the first fan fight of the season. We appreciate your time here on Red Corner, Blue Corner.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
For more Ohio State and Michigan fans out there, we have a little treat for you. We're giving away a pair of tickets to the game. To enter the sweepstakes, it is simple. You go to our Instagram account, redcorner_blue corner. You find the post and like it. You tag a friend you would like to bring to the game with you. And last but not least, follow us and watch Stadium and Instagram. Good luck.
All right, coming up, Iowa is one win away from punching its ticket to Indianapolis. Find out if they should start planning the trip now or hold off until the end of the regular season. That and more coming up right here on Stadium. welcome back. We've got a couple fans duking it out on the YouTube chat. You guys are doing your part, so we're going to do ours and bring you involved. Jim Trey, look at this, Joshua. Yes, Ohio State is scared of the Wolverines, and they know what will happen Saturday when they say, welcome to the Michigan boys.
Shut up. Absolutely not. Nobody's scared. Like this is one of the wildest notions to me. Did you ever, the year you were 5-7, did you ever walk into a football game scared?
No.
No.
Hey, what'd they say? If you're scared, go to church. If you're scared, don't even get on the damn bus.
Ain't nobody scared.
Well, good, because SM74 boss said Ohio State is not scared of meat and chicken. Stop it.
Meat chicken.
Undercooked chicken you should be fearful of, right?
Jim Harbaugh's not scared of chicken
Big
anymore.
week for chicken this week. Jim Harbaugh's got it. The chicken is no longer the nervous bird. All right, let's
He
go.
says quarterback should eat chicken now.
Yeah.
Low maintenance, high production, which I do like. That was a good quote from him.
Hey,
low maintenance, high production.
Yes. There's a couple chickens in the West because this
boy.
thing's been up for grabs for a while. But one team that you can't call a chicken is the Iowa Hawkeyes. Because even with all the jokes, just like we just made right there, look who's sitting at the top. Iowa just needs one win on Saturday to claim the division outright and punch its ticket to Indy. But standing in their way is Illinois, one of two teams that can spoil the Hawkeyes' party. Joshua, when you look at this matchup, how can Illinois upend Iowa and stay in the race to fight the Big Ten title? And might I remind you, Brett Bielema said Paddock is not the starter. He's going back with Altmaier.
Okay, so I'll give you two things that if I was Illinois, it would be paramount for me to do. Is number one, when Deacon Hill does drop back and throw the football, because we saw that I was more confident in this passing attack than they had ever been. They got into some empty sets. Take the football away from that man. Force him to throw you the ball. Get him into a situation where the ball is in the air, it's up for grabs, and it's yours. And how do you do that? Johnny Newton.
Yeah.
Johnny Newton, you got to be a game wrecker. He has to affect the quarterback from the interior of that defensive line.
Because really what happened last week, and I was on the call for the Iowa-Rutgers game, is Rutgers, I think there was some carryover. I think that Ohio State game really hurt their energy. I mean, they looked a little bit beat up. So what ended up happening is I was able to run the football. And then once they were able to run the football, they were able to get into play action, in boot action, in nakeds, and scheme up some easier completions for Deacon Hill. They also got into empty, and Rutgers wasn't able to generate pressure. That's where Johnny Newton comes involved. I completely agree. It starts with stopping the run, because then you're going to put Iowa in a disadvantageous position.
Yeah, this one is interesting, right? And for folks who don't know about Brett Bielema, he does have a Hawkeye tattooed on his leg because that's where he played his college football. So you know he's going to have a little extra energy for this one. Now, Illinois is just one of a handful of 5-win teams looking for that 6th win to get to bowl eligibility. Both Nebraska and Wisconsin sit with 5 wins on the year. They face off this week. Who do you think is going to get 6 this week?
Gosh, good guess. Who could get 6? I don't know. Wisconsin's home, right? I think that plays a factor.
Yeah, yes.
What kills Nebraska is the turnovers, and
Does it kill them because they've gotten to 5 wins with the turnovers?
I know, but I guess the other piece is how healthy and who's healthy for Wisconsin. At this point, we had this conversation. It's continuation from that. I'm going to pick the Cornhuskers because I think Matt Rule has this program going like this, whereas Wisconsin, they're trying to find themselves.
Wisconsin has lost 3 in a row. The Ohio State loss, I think everybody anticipated that was going to be a thing, so let's not even count that. You come out the next week, you're playing Indiana. Indiana is a bad football team. Tom Allen's out there coaching for his life.
They're tough, though.
You lose that, and then you got David Braun, the permanent job, because you went ahead and lost to Northwestern as well. Wisconsin needs this, quite frankly, more than Nebraska needs it right now, because this was not supposed to be what year one of Luke Fickell looked like. He has this program looking like they got more questions than they did a year ago when they fired Paul Chryst. So I'm going to say that Luke's going to have his guys right for this one, but it's an ugly game all around, y'all.
This is a gut check week for Wisconsin because Hunter Waller, I believe it was him, player within the locker room, called out his colleagues and his teammates, and he said, basically, if you're scared, go to church. If you don't want to be a part of this, get off the bus. Like, he's calling out his teammates. So that, to me, this is a gut check week. Who shows up?
And Luke Fickell also said this was going to be the week where he found out who really wanted to be there.
Yep.
That was what the head coach of that program said. These guys got to respond.
All right, that's the point. All right, Oregon State, Washington State. Before we leave you, we've got some more fallout from the Big Ten expansion. A judge has ruled that Oregon State and Washington State will be allowed to control all decisions for the Pac-12 once the other members vacate the conference. Washington has already filed an appeal, hoping to keep its hands on some money. There's a lot of money involved. JP, are you ready for the Pac-2 and best of 7 series for the conference champion? Who says no?
Yeah, I'm saying no to the best of 7. I am ready for the Pac-2, and this is where it becomes interesting to me, is the idea of them being able to control some of the finances. You got the money that's on the line. I know that people are not going to be excited about that. I also think about it like this. If we lived in a house together and you abandon the home, why shouldn't I be in control of the home? Why? And so why shouldn't Washington State and Oregon State be in control of the home?
That's a good point. That's a good point. Here's the one thing I do know. This is true with the situation between Ohio State and Michigan. This is true here. There will be lawyers. So if you're young and watching this and you want to be very wealthy, become a lawyer and get involved in these type of cases.
But not just any lawyer. You need to litigate sports, right? You need to get into this. Work on behalf of the conference. Work on behalf of the schools. Work on behalf of the players. Work on behalf of the coaches. But get you a Juris Doctor and then go ahead and represent one of the only fields it seems like that's not dying, and that is sports. But that'll do it for us right here on Red Corner, Blue Corner. For Jake Butt, I'm Joshua Perry, and we'll see you back here tomorrow on Stadium.
What's happening, y'all? Welcome in to Stadium. This is Rivals Down South, youtube.com/@Watch Stadium. Shout out to Josh Perry, Jake Butt, the red corner, blue corner guys. But now it's time to talk about the conference that actually matters, the SEC. I don't really mean that. I love all of college football. We'll be breaking it all down. I'm T-Bob Hebert, former LSU Tigre, as well as General Sports Talk man. He is Hudson Mason, a former Georgia Bulldog, as well as General Sports Talk man. Hudson, what's up, man? How we feeling today?
Feeling good, man. Got the dogs at 1, and then everybody else looking up. So it's a good day to be a Georgia Bulldog, right?
I could almost, like Obi-Wan when Alderaan blows up, I could almost hear the barks emanating from throughout the Southeast as finally your disrespected Georgia Bulldogs took over the top spot in last night's CFP poll. And I guess the question is it the right call? And obviously the answer is yes, right? As we've talked about plenty of times on this show, everybody wants a single metric to say, like, you know, what is it? Like, what is the metric? We need consistency, but there is consistency through a combination of metrics, right? Through eye test, through resume. And after the Ole Miss beatdown, combined with the heater that Georgia's been on really post-Auburn, maybe a little bit of a Vandy wobble. But yeah, you look at the resume, beating Mizzou and Ole Miss, and the manner in which you beat them and how you beat the rest of your schedule. And they now have the combination of those different elements to rank the Georgia Bulldogs first in the country.
Yeah, I think it was, well, let me rephrase that. I know it was the right decision. And I think the thing that sticks out to me, T-Bob, is that Missouri, I think, helped Georgia's case. I mean, who would have thought at the beginning of the year that the Missouri Tigers, who were picked 6th in the SEC, to finish 6th in the SEC East, would not only be a top 10 team at this point in the regular season, but that their win over Georgia and then Georgia's win over Missouri, and then Missouri following up last week with a dominant win over Tennessee only helped support, in my opinion, Georgia's position as the number one team. So we talk all the time about, hey, you know, what's more important, when you beat the team or how that team kind of finishes the year. Both are the case here for Georgia, that they beat barely, double digits. They beat Missouri by double digits, and then Missouri falls up and dominates Tennessee, only helped Georgia a little bit more, and then in the way that they dominated Ole Miss. So the eye test and the resume for Georgia, they have both of those going for them right now.
Well, and look, let's be clear about this. A lot of people tell you that, you know, last year shouldn't matter and this year should exist independently of the other two. And, well, first off, I think that's a bit flawed in terms of process, right? Because we are trying to predict the future. And many historians will tell you that there is value to be gained in looking at past events as an indicator of future results, right? We all know about the old cliche, those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it. So you're going to tell me that I'm trying to decide between Georgia, Ohio State, and Michigan. And so I have Kirby Smart, a coach and a staff with some connective tissues on the roster that just are coming off 2 back-to-back national championships. And when you talk about Ryan Day and Jim Harbaugh, well, those teams are great. They don't have any natties. Well, of course I'm not going to completely ignore that. And of course, that's going to also score in Georgia's favor and give them a bit of the benefit of the doubt. So I think pretty much everybody's in, and I haven't seen pushback on that, right? So I don't want to tilt at windmills here, because I think pretty much everybody agrees that Georgia should be number one. What about the rest of the top 4? 2 and 3, Michigan, Ohio State at 2, Michigan at 3. And there was some discussion as to whether or not the Wolverines would jump over the Buckeyes now that they finally played a good game or played a good team and won that game. Do you think the committee was right to leave Ohio State at 2?
Yeah, I do. Until Michigan plays somebody in their weight class, and Penn State was a highly ranked team last week, but it's clear after watching Penn State last week and their inefficiencies on offense that that team is, and that number next to that Penn State team is more inflated because of the lack of strength of schedule, or the lack of quality teams really in the Big Ten. And so I think 2 and 3 right now, I wouldn't put have much pushback. If you wanted to change Ohio State and Michigan, me personally, I would have Ohio State 2, Michigan 3. Really, with the biggest bone that I've got to pick with the committee is Florida State and Washington. I don't understand how, with Washington's 3 top 25 wins, Florida State's best win right now is LSU, which is a good win, but that's really all they have to brag about. How in the world they have Florida State ahead of Washington right now?
Well, and it becomes more interesting because if you start to dive into the analytics, Washington's resume is as good or even better than Ohio State's, right? And yes, it is Ohio State's resume that is serving as a deciding factor between them and Michigan. So, I mean, I feel you. It is a bit of, though, I get this odd feeling where it's like, yes, I too, look, I would be mad if I was a Washington fan. Why are we still at 5? We have a better resume. Why does Oregon and Oregon State get credit for beating Utah, right? Like, Oregon's only big win is beating Utah, and they're the top 1-loss team. Oregon State's only big win is beating Utah, and the second highest ranked 2-loss team. And yet here Washington beats Utah and nothing happens. So I understand Washington fans being angry. However, if they win out, they will absolutely jump Florida State, right? And right now, if you're at 5, you're in the top 4. Because Ohio State and Michigan right now are basically they are Schrodinger's playoff team, right? Yeah. We don't know if the cat is alive or dead, but they're going to play. We're going to open that box. One reality will close, another will open. One of them will be in. I do think getting the 3 seed matters, though. But again, there is just no way in hell that if Washington beats Oregon State in Corvallis and then wins a Pac-12 championship, even Florida State being Louisville will not matter. Washington will jump them for the 3 seed. Unfortunately, Hudson, I feel awful about my Huskies. And yes, I'm saying my, because they were my preseason pick to win the Pac-12. I feel awful about Washington going into Corvallis this weekend. This is an Oregon State Beaver team that is tailor-made to beat Washington in terms of running the ball, in terms of they're going to be at home. They play great defense. Washington's rush defense is awful. DJ Uiagalelei is one of the best when it comes to play action. Washington defense has been really struggling, giving up big plays. And it's going to be rainy and cold, which also tends to favor the team that wants to run the ball. Like, there's a reason why the Beavers are favored this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah. And if I had to give you maybe like one major flaw about this Washington team, it's that it's really a house and a foundation built off of or leaning kind of on one pillar. And that pillar is Michael Penix Jr. And so you can see maybe how the foundation or how people look at Washington right now, and they can start to project a loss maybe as early as this weekend, as maybe compared to like Oregon, who's got a lot of really good young players. They're big and physical at the line of scrimmage. They're not just kind of one-dimensional or built around just one player. If you go back and look at Washington, I mean, they've got the 102nd scoring defense in the country right now. So, yeah, they can put up a lot of points and score with the best and go punch for punch in the country, but they give up a ton of points. And I think all those things kind of come together that make you feel like, man, their day is coming. Judgment Day is coming for Washington, and it could be as early as this weekend against Oregon State.
And one thing to watch, if you're going to watch a game this weekend, which you're listening to the show, you probably are, just recognize John Smith may be one of those guys that ends up in the SEC. I mean, if you look at where Oregon State currently at, and look, we're talking about teams with Washington's 20-2 over the last years. Oregon State's 18-5. These are 2 damn good football teams going to do battle, and maybe a future SEC coach and John Smith involved in one of them. Speaking of the SEC, it's officially set in stone. Alabama, Georgia. And what do you think, Hudson? Does Alabama, are they complete enough? Can they beat the Georgia Bulldogs?
Yeah, they can absolutely beat Georgia. I mean, I've always said the number one component that it takes to beat Georgia is physicality, and physicality on the line of scrimmage. And that's mainly why Georgia pummels most teams. It's why they pummeled Ole Miss. If you can't match up at the line of scrimmage with Georgia, you have no chance. Alabama can. So that's number one. But then you start to really look at the way Alabama's playing offensively. Jalen Milroe and his legs are the X factor. And you watch what Jalen Milroe has done the past couple weeks with his legs, LSU, and then what he did against Kentucky. And he's getting better as a passer. The way Tommy Rees is incorporating his lower half and some more design quarterback runs. I mean, how as a Georgia fan does that not scare you? Then you throw in that Alabama's defense is already really good. So yeah, Alabama can absolutely win this. And I think for Georgia, as a Georgia fan, as a Georgia former player, I think I speak on behalf of I think a lot of Georgia fans thought that Georgia was already in. And you look at this and you go, man, if the Big Ten is undefeated, if the Pac-12 is undefeated, if the ACC champ is undefeated, that becomes a must-win, a win or get in for Georgia. I didn't really realize that there was still that much on the line as a Georgia Bulldog this late in the year, still being undefeated.
Well, normally you have 2 conferences eliminate themselves, at times even 3, until you end up with multiple teams that make it from one conference. But you have very strong candidacy across the board still, right? I mean, FSU remains undefeated. As long as they do so, the ACC will be in. The ACC's been left out of recent memory. Oregon and Washington both feel like very strong candidates. And for once, the Pac-12 may not cannibalize itself, right? And then, of course, you have Texas. No, make me no mistake. Like, Georgia needs to win the SEC championship if they want to make the playoffs, unless they just want to rely on complete chaos. But you ain't going to gaslight me, Hudson Mason. Like, you ain't going to pee on me and tell me it's raining, okay? Lou Holtz. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, I would be very worried about Alabama. Get the hell out of here. What are you talking? Look, let's be clear. Alabama's great. Georgia's great. Both teams have elite defenses. I would score the defenses basically equivalent, right? Bama, maybe a slight edge in the front 7. Some would tell you that Georgia has a slight edge on the back end. It's close enough, I don't know that I care to have that argument. But the bottom line is that there is a disparity offensively. And you're going to talk to me about Jalen Milroe against LSU at Kentucky. Okay, it's LSU at Kentucky. It ain't the Georgia Bulldogs defense. We are talking about 2 vastly different things. I mean, especially in the case of LSU, you're talking about one of the worst Power 5 defenses in the entire country. And so, yeah, I like what I've seen out of Milroe, but there is a discernible gap nonetheless. And here's what really pushes it across the finish line here. Are you going to take Tommy Rees to out-scheme that discernible gap? You going to take Tommy Rees to push the Tide over Kirby Smart and this defensive staff? I think not. Georgia clearly is the favorite here. We said all offseason they were going to run through the SEC, win the SEC, and the question was whether or not Beck and Bobo could push them across the finish line. Nothing has changed. It's just that I actually think Georgia looks a little stronger than they even thought they would have. So credit to Alabama. I don't think they have the firepower to keep up with Georgia. They're just not as complete of a team. Speaking of complete teams, who's better in the SEC? Ole Miss, Mizzou, the team's vying for 3rd place behind those 2. Plus, got some tweeting tips for college coaches. Keep it locked here on Rivals. Yo, you see it right there on the screen. Welcome back to Rivals Down South. So, if you just glanced at this, like I did yesterday, a tweet from Liberty coach Jamie Chadwell. Liberty, of course, currently 10-0, not ranked in the CFP. That kind of makes me angry. Whatever. But the school tweets out, hey, the Coach Chadwell show is going to be moved to Wednesday. And Jamie Chadwell quotes me to say, see everyone on Wednesday. And so I glance, I'm like, what's the okay, cool. Well, the internet once again gets you. You got to be worried about that geolocation, as you can see circled there on the screen. Jamie Chadwell tweets, see everyone on Wednesday from Starkville, Mississippi. And in my experience, there's no such thing as luck or coincidence, for that matter. Obviously, Jamie Chadwell in Starkville interviewing for the Mississippi State Bulldog head coaching job. And while this is deeply funny in the way that he got caught, it is not unexpected, Hudson, because in my mind, I think Jamie Chadwell is one of the strongest head coaching candidates I have seen in years, especially if you're talking about giving a guy his first opportunity on the big stage. I mean, his resume is impeccable.
Yeah, no, he is he more than deserves to have at least a interview for this job, let alone maybe even be the guy that gets the job. But still a really bad look when you play UMass on Saturday and in the middle of the week, you're flying down to Starkville, Mississippi to interview for the job. Like, can we not do a Zoom interview? I mean, I know like if he just changes his setting location that none of this comes out, but still, like, it's still a pretty bad look, in my opinion, when the coaches and the players are like, hey, anybody seen Jamie? Like, you're in the building and like, yeah, anybody seen, oh, he's in Starkville on a Tuesday at like 2:00. Yeah, he actually flew down to Starkville to interview for the job. I mean, like,
it's not a great look,
what kind of
but you know what it is? You know what it is, Hudson? It is what it is. You know, that's the high money, big politics world of college football. And you know why it ain't a Zoom interview? Because they want him. You know, if it ain't going to be a Zoom interview if you have to pay this guy $8 million a year, $6 million a year, whatever it's going to take from him. He already has a really nice contract at Liberty. He's got a good setup at Liberty. But let's look at what Jamie Chadwell has done since he's been a head coach. So he takes over a Coastal Carolina team that is joining the Sun Belt, moving up in competition. 3-9 his first year, 5-7 his second. Then they jump to 11-1, lose in the Cure Bowl. Then they go 11-2, win the Cure Bowl, 9-3, and now 10-0 this season. His quarterback at Coastal Carolina, Grayson McCall, was viewed as one of the best in the entire country. This year, he's taken a massive step back, right? So you see, like, this is a guy who checks all the boxes. He took a team that was bad. He made them good. He won consistently at a lower program. And he has a side of the ball that he specializes in. He is an offensive mastermind. He's at the head of this almost pseudo triple option passing new age attack that has obviously now succeeded at multiple places. If I was Mississippi State, I would jump at the chance to hire Jamie Chadwell. In fact, if I was Texas A&M, I would even seriously think about it. I still think A&M, it's a bit too early. They're not going to want to commit to him, but this would be a home run, in my opinion, for your Mississippi State Bulldogs. Let's talk, speaking of Mississippi, Ole Miss and Mizzou. We know Georgia and Alabama is the best, but it does kind of beg the question. Those other two look like they're going to finish at 10-2. Who are the second best teams in the SEC, or in this case, I suppose the third? Of course, Georgia beat both, but a way to kind of parse through this, Hudson, is who would you rather have? And it does kind of keep with our Would You Rather Wednesday game that we play. Let's look at the quarterbacks first. Two very good names here. Hudson, you played quarterback for the Georgia Bulldogs. Would you rather have Jackson Dart or Brady Cook?
Yeah, I'd rather have Jackson Dart, and it's really meant as no slight to Brady Cook because he's having an incredible year. But I would say Jackson Dart just because of the mobility that he brings, his lower half, with his lower half, his ability to make plays outside of the pocket. And so I think that's the biggest difference. You know, you could break down their numbers as a passer. Both of them are having really good years, but I think the biggest difference between these two guys is what Jackson Dart is able to do with his legs, how the Lane Kiffin incorporates that into their offense. Brady Cook, a little bit more of a pocket passer.
But hold on now. Don't sleep on Brady Cook's legs, though, Hudson. I mean, he can move. he maybe hadn't had to move.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Cook's got some legs on him too. I guess maybe the only thing would say is that I've seen it a bit longer out of Dart. Now, Dart took a very big leap from last year to this year, whereas Brady Cook was being booed at the beginning of this season by the home crowd before really finding himself in Luther Burden. And we see what, is it Herbie? Kellen Moore's little brother, who's the OC at Mizzou, what he's done for Cook. So I would take Cook by a slight edge there. What about running back? Quinshon Judkins or Cody Schrader?
Man, this one's tough, right? Because Cody Schrader might be the most undercovered player in the country. I mean, leading the SEC in rushing. I would go with Cody Schrader here. I mean, this is tough because Quinshon Judkins is a great back, but he got off to a much slower start this year. At the beginning of the year, he was banged up, dealing with some rib injuries. Finally has gotten healthy, and we've seen a little bit more of the normal Quinshon Judkins. But Cody Schrader has been having a year really since week one of the college football season, and he's done it against really good, even against Georgia. He went for over 100 yards against Georgia's defense, so I would go with Cody Schrader.
100 against UGA's defense, and just did something that nobody's ever done. 200 on the ground, 100 to the air against a very good Tennessee defensive front. You're right, Hudson. Give me Cody Schrader and give me Mizzou. I would take Mizzou over Ole Miss overall. All right, coming up next, maybe a little arch man into the SEC. Plus, Would You Rather Wednesday. We'll see you on the other side. What's happening, y'all? Welcome back. Rivals Down South. Chat was asking for a shingles update. Remember, youtube.com/Watch Stadium if you want to get involved. We are past the point of pain with the shingles. We're kind of getting a little bit of pleasure, Hudson. The only thing I got left are sensitive nipples. So your boy's feeling great compared to where we were at a couple of weeks ago. Like kind of overly sensitive, you know, when it almost feels too good, like a little bit, but whatever. Pain and pleasure remain two sides of the same coin. And in keeping Would you rather, pain or pleasure? Let's do a little Would You Rather Wednesday. Would you rather give Jimbo Fisher $76 million to leave or Bobby Petrino $21 million to stay?
Oh man, I think I'd rather give Jimbo $76 million to leave, man. I mean, you're paying $76 million. I need more than no 10-win season. So yeah, you got to go.
Yeah, especially when the boosters hand you a $160 million check at halftime. That's unbelievable. Yeah. It's Georgia, Tennessee this week. Would you rather be a Bulldog or a Coonhound, Hudson Mason?
You know, I don't want to be
you can't say
canceled
Bulldog.
by Georgia Nation.
Bulldogs are inbred. Their genetics are a complete disaster. It's just a horror show of a dog breed. They're adorable, but they have massive health problems. The answer is obviously Coonhound. Would you rather watch Polar Express or Home Alone?
Home Alone. You know, if we're talking about Home Alone 1, we're not talking about like Home Alone 7 or 6 or whatever they're on. But Polar Express is a little underrated, but Home Alone 1.
So you think Polar Express is underrated? That is the 18th bad opinion you've had today, Hudson. Polar Express is garbage in terms of Christmas movies.
Dude,
it's boring. It's got the worst color palette. It's got the worst color palette that I've ever seen. It's all gray and brown. The North Pole is what, an Industrial Revolution child labor sweatshop aesthetic? Like that's what you want to sell people on? Get the hell out of here. It's not even getting into the uncanny valley. Tom Hanks creeping me out. Like, it's bad on all fronts. They at least should have watched that new Grinch movie at halftime. Maybe they would have won.